On a quiet stretch of prairie, a lonely cowboy thought his days would be lived in silence. Just him, his horse, and the wind. But one evening, 7 children appeared on his porch like ghosts from another life. Their faces were thin, their eyes desperate. And then came the words that would change everything. "Our mama's inside. She wants you to marry her." In that moment, the cowboy's solitude collided with destiny. What would he choose? The safety of loneliness, or the terrifying, beautiful weight of family? If this story already has your heart racing, make sure to hit like so more folks find it, and subscribe if you love true heartwarming Wild West tales like this one. Don't forget to share it with a friend, because stories this powerful are meant to be felt together. Now let's step into the life of Jake Morrison, the cowboy who never expected to become a father of 7.
The prairie had a sound all its own, not quite silence, but close. For Jake Morrison, it was the only company he'd known for years. The wind whispered through the tall grass. The barn creaked when the sun went down. And at night, the coyote's cry reminded him how empty his land really was. Jake wasn't always alone. Once, he'd dreamed of filling this cabin with the laughter of children. He'd carved a cradle with his own hands, strong enough to last for generations. But when Sarah, his wife, died in childbirth, and their son with her, that dream vanished like smoke on the horizon. Now, his days followed a rhythm carved by grief. Breakfast eaten standing, chores done without words, suppers ending with him staring at the stars through the window. He talked to his horse sometimes, just to hear her voice. Solitude had become not just a habit, but a shield. And yet, buried deep, a flicker still burned, a longing for the family he'd once imagined. He never spoke of it, never admitted it. But the empty rooms in his cabin seemed to remember what he had tried so hard to forget. That it happened on a late afternoon, when the prairie sky glowed gold and the air carried that restless stillness before nightfall. Jake was patching a fence when he noticed movement at the edge of his land. At first, he thought it was stray cattle, but as the figures drew closer, his breath caught. Children, 7 of them. They walked in a line, thin as shadows, their patched clothes fluttering in the breeze. The oldest girl, hardly more than 16, kept the smaller ones close, guiding them like a young mother. The youngest, a boy no older than 5, clutched a ragged doll. When they reached his porch, they stood as though awaiting judgment, eyes wide, faces worn by hunger, but steady. Finally, the girl spoke, her voice trembling but brave. "Our mama's inside, she's dying." Jake froze. His cabin door, usually nothing more than a slab of wood, now felt like the gateway to a world he hadn't expected. Inside, a stranger fought her last battle. Outside, 7 children carried a desperate hope. And then, the smallest boy stepped forward, his voice barely louder than the prairie wind. "She wants you to marry her, so we won't be orphans." Jake's hand hovered on the doorknob, heavy as iron. For 3 years, no one had crossed that threshold but him. Now, beyond it, a dying woman waited. She was beautiful, even in her weakness. Mary Catherine lay propped against his pillows. Her dark hair fanned across the white sheet like ink spilled on snow. Her eyes, deep brown like her children's, followed him as he stepped inside. "I know this seems like madness," she whispered, her voice carrying the ghost of laughter and pain. "But I don't have long. My husband died in a mining accident, and I've done all I can. But my children, they need someone. They need a father." Jake removed his hat, unsure if he was in the presence of desperation or something sacred. She explained her journey, the washing jobs, the towns, the endless moving. And now, her body was failing, her time slipping away. "Why me?" Jake asked quietly. Her faint smile held no deceit. "Because you're a good man, because you're alone, and because you have enough to give them a chance." Outside, the children's laughter rose in the wind, thin, fragile, but real. Inside, Jake faced the heaviest choice of his life. The moment felt fragile, almost holy, and then it shattered. Hoofbeats thundered across the prairie, fast and determined. Jake's instincts tensed. He stepped to the window and saw 5 riders approach, dust swirling around them. Their leader dismounted, his presence hard as steel. Beside him, a county official adjusted papers in his hand. Mary Catherine's breath grew shallow. "They've found us," she whispered. "My brother-in-law, Thomas. He wants to take the children back east, split them among relatives. They'll work them like servants. Outside, the children huddled together, eyes wide with fear. The oldest girl, Emma, stood firm, shielding the little ones. Thomas's voice carried like a whip. Mary Catherine O'Malley. The law says those children belong with family. Gather their things. Jake's jaw tightened. He'd seen men like Thomas before, men who used law as a weapon, not a shield. Mary's voice trembled. Unless you marry me. A husband's claim, it supersedes theirs. Jake looked from her pale face to the 7 pairs of eyes waiting in the yard. His heart pounded. He'd wanted silence, but silence was no longer an option. What do I need to do? He asked. Mary pointed to a small, worn leather book by the door. Jake's hands shook as he opened the preacher's book. The words were familiar but heavy with new meaning. He glanced at Mary, fragile yet fierce, fighting for her children with her last strength. Emma, she called, her voice steady despite the rattle in her chest. Bring everyone inside. Quickly. The children filed in, confusion mixing with hope. Thomas's boots thundered up the porch steps, each strike like a warning bell. Do you want to be our papa, Mr. Morrison? Emma asked, her young voice breaking. Jake's throat burned. He thought of Sarah, of the cradle carved and never used. He thought of empty rooms that had echoed too long. He looked at their faces, scared, but shining with desperate hope. Yes, he said. Yes, I do. Mary squeezed his hand. Then we'd better hurry. And with trembling voice, Jake Morrison spoke the words that turned strangers into family. When Thomas Lee stormed through the door, his papers ready, he found a family already bound together. Jake Morrison stood tall, no longer the lonely cowboy but a husband and father, his claim undeniable. The law had no power against what had just been sealed inside that cabin. Mary Catherine passed only 3 days later, but she left this world as Mary Catherine Morrison, her children safe under their new father's name. Years rolled on. Emma grew into a strong woman. Annie became the town's first lady doctor, and the boys carved their place in the world. And Jake, he grew old surrounded by laughter, no longer haunted by silence. The cowboy who once feared a family too big found that love was the only thing wide enough to fill the prairie. Because family, after all, isn't always born. Sometimes it arrives at your door.